friends, welcome back or welcome if you're new here. My name is Stacy and I am the Chapter Conundrum. And in today's video, I want to talk about some anticipated releases coming up. So books that I'm really excited for and looking forward to. I'm going to have these organized by both genre and release date, and I'll put timestamps for the different genres so you can jump around if you're only interested in a couple of the genres. But we definitely have some romance and romantasy to talk about. We've got some thrillers. We've got some sci-fi fantasy, and I think also maybe one or two other books that don't really fall into those three. But for the most part, those are the genres I have upcoming releases that I'm looking forward to in. So those are the ones I'm gonna mainly timestamp. I'm not going to go too in depth on any of the synopses for any of these books. I like to go into books that are newer not knowing too much about them. So I'll touch on like the basic setup and the premise and maybe like highlight why I want to read this or why I'm interested in reading it. But definitely you don't have to worry about any kind of spoilers. I'm just going to touch on the basic premise when I talk about these. So seeing that it's February and this video is coming to you guys a little bit before Valentine's Day, let's go ahead and start out with romance and romantasy that's coming up. And I'm not sure if you guys will end up seeing this before or after this comes out. So this may already have come out, but it's Deep End by Ali Hazelwood. And this is marketed as a steamy college romance between a competitive diver and an ace swimmer. So that's basically all I need to know going into this. I have read and enjoyed pretty much all of Ali Hazelwood's books so far. The only ones I haven't read so far are Bride, which is kind of like her foray into fantasy romance, and her other most recent contemporary, Not in Love. But I have enjoyed several of her books and I'm eager to check this one out. And this drops on February 4th. Next up, we have Rebel Witch by Kristen Ciccarelli, and this is releasing on February 18th. This is the second book in the Crimson Moth series, the first book in the US being called Heartless Hunter. And funnily enough, I have a reading blog for Heartless Hunter because my sister and I curated some fun book gift boxes for each other for Christmas. So if you haven't seen that yet, definitely go check that out. I'll link that in the cards. But I loved my time reading book one, and I'm excited to see where the series ends with the second installment in this duology. And this is essentially the story of a witch who is kind of hiding her identity and helping to rescue other captured witches and a witch hunter. And they both have their own reasons for kind of getting into this relationship. Our witch hunter kind of suspects that potentially this girl is the Crimson Moth, which is like this vigilante witch who helps free other witches. And our main female character knows that our male main character is involved in capturing some of these witches and may have inside information as to where they're being held and all that. So yeah, this was just a really fun, entertaining read. It definitely had a lot of tension and kept me on the edge of my seat, and I definitely wanted to know what was going to happen. So I'm eager to dive into the sequel and see where things go. So next up on April 22nd, we have a new Emily Henry book coming out called Great Big Beautiful Life. And I am mainly interested in this because it's Emily Henry. I have read all of her adult contemporary romances to date to various degrees of enjoyment, but they're usually fun reads for me. And I know that this features two authors who are competing on a trial sort of basis in order to write someone's story. So I think this person is trying to determine which author they're going to choose, and it's going to be a romance between the two authors. But we will see how that all unfolds. And then lastly, for the romance category, we have One Golden Summer by Carly Fortune coming out, I believe, May 6th. And this is actually going to be kind of a sequel to one of her other romances, Every Summer After. It definitely has some of the same characters, and having read Every Summer After, there's definitely some tension on how things will play out and kind of go and get resolved in that one. And so I would recommend probably reading Every Summer After before jumping into One Golden Summer, just to avoid spoilers from what I know so far of the premise. So obviously, being that this is kind of a sequel, we're going back to her books that are set in the Muskoka area in Barry's Bay, and it's going to be a summery romance between people at their cottages. So I have previously read and enjoyed a couple Carly Fortune books, but the main reason I continue to pick her up and enjoy her is because she's somewhat of a local author for me, and Muskoka is about an hour away from where I grew up. So definitely things feel very familiar and homey when I read her books, And there's just something about reading a contemporary book by a Canadian author close to home that just takes me home. Like, I don't know if it's just the characters' attitudes, if it's like the slang, if it's just a little bit of the social aspects of the book and the culture and community. But yeah, there's just something about those kinds of books that always sort of transport me home, and I love that experience and have really enjoyed some of her other books. So I'm definitely looking forward to this one. Next up, we have several mystery thrillers that I'm looking forward to in 2025. And the first one of those is You Killed Me First by John Mars. And this releases, I believe, March 4th. And I don't know a ton about the premise of this one, but I do know that it features 3 women, all with secrets, which is very typical of a John Mars book. And the opening of this is a woman waking up bound and gagged in the middle of a fire. So definitely we need to read and find out like who put her there, how this all happened, and I'm definitely curious to check this out. I've enjoyed several of his books in the past, and he's written one of my all-time favorite thrillers with The Passengers. So if you know about John Mars, you know that he has some kind of like true standalones and then some standalones set in the same universe that kind of hint and give Easter eggs and sometimes spoilers for his other books in that universe. This book is going to be one of his true standalones, so you can read this without having read any of his other books without worrying whatsoever that you'll be spoiled. Early reviews for this are very positive, and I am just eager to check it out. We will also be reading this on the Bookastromer Discord in the month of March. We'll have a buddy read chat for it as part of our John Mars read-along. The next thriller in release order that I'm excited to check out is called Burn After Reading by Catherine Ryan Howard. And this, from what I know of the premise, follows a ghostwriter locked in a room with someone who's potentially a murderer. So I'm assuming that they're going to try and maybe get their confession and record it, and probably have some interesting conversations, to say the least. And I have previously read and enjoyed 56 Days by this author, so I am curious to check out her new work. Next up, we have The Man Made of Smoke by Alex North coming out May 8th. And I'm very intrigued by the premise of this, but I have also read and enjoyed The Whispers by this author. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to checking it out for those reasons. The premise of this is that you have a man who's now a clinical psychologist, but he witnessed something when he was younger, and he carries some guilt about not interfering to kind of correct the situation in the moment. But essentially, now that he's an adult and a criminal psychiatrist, he is called and informed that his dad is now missing and was last seen approaching a high cliff that's kind of known as a local suicide spot. But his dad is a retired police officer and was privately looking into an old cold case of the disappearance of a woman. So definitely all of those things I'm sure will tie in and be part of a larger story. And I'm kind of curious to read and find out how all of that is going to tie together. I do also know from my experience reading The Whispers that Alex North writes compelling family dynamic relationships that maybe are not always perfect. And so I'm interested to see how he handles the father-son dynamic in this one as well. Next up, on June 10th, we have 2 books coming out that I'm very excited for. The first of those is King of Ashes by S.A. Cosby. And this follows a group of siblings whose dad was just in an accident and is now in a coma. The eldest brother is kind of coming home back to this dynamic to support the family. And the youngest brother is kind of into some no good situations, is in debt to some pretty shady people. And the middle child, the sister, is kind of holding the family business of this crematorium that they run together and is just kind of tired and fed up. But from what I know of the premise, the circumstances in which their father was in an accident and put into a coma are suspicious. And so I think they suspect that it's somehow tied to the youngest brother's situation and behavior. So I'm assuming these siblings are going to band together and try and work out why this happened and how it happened and go from there. I have previously read and enjoyed 2 S.A. Cosby books, Razorblade Tears and My Darkest Prayer, and I'm very eager to continue with his work. I also love that he's a local author to where I live now in Virginia, and his books are usually set in our area, so that adds an extra fun element to reading them for me. So yeah, definitely eager to check this one out. And then the second June 10th release is With a Vengeance by Riley Sager, one of my all-time favorite thriller or horror authors. I've read all of his books, enjoyed them all, and I'm especially intrigued by this one because the premise of this is very reminiscent to one of my all-time favorite Nancy Drew PC games from when I was a kid growing up, The Last Train to Blue Moon Canyon. Essentially here we have a young woman who feels like her life has kind of been ruined by 6 individuals, and she invites them to go on an overnight train journey. And on this train, she reveals that she knows what they did and she plans to have them arrested at their destination. Essentially, these individuals orchestrated some kind of sabotage in the past that killed her brother, and then they framed her father for the crime. But very early on in this train journey, one of the 6 turns up murdered. The clincher is Anna didn't do it. Someone is doing this and framing her. So it is going to be her trying to keep them alive in order to get to their destination and avoid being put in a similar situation than her father. So yeah, this sounds like it'll be a really great time. And I'm always eager to check out Riley Sager's new books. So this will definitely be a hit with me. And I'll probably read it very soon after release day. So the last thriller I have to talk about releases July 29th, and that is She Didn't See It Coming by Sherry LaPena. And I have read several Sherry LaPena books, and some of hers I would definitely put in my top 10 thriller list. I really love What Have You Done? I really love The Couple Next Door. I also really loved Everyone Here Is Lying. So definitely, she's a thriller author that consistently entertains me and gets high ratings from me. So I'm definitely curious to check out her newest one. I don't know a ton about this one, but I do know that it's marketed as like a psychological domestic thriller and follows a married couple. And one day the husband at work gets a phone call that his wife failed to pick up their child from daycare. So I'm assuming it's going to be following her disappearance and what the heck happened. There's no narrator listed for this yet on Audible, but I'm really hoping that it ends up being January Lavoie again. She does such a fantastic job narrating so many of her other books, and so we will cross our fingers and see what happens with that. So before I get into sci-fi and fantasy releases, I do have one book that doesn't really fall into any of my other genres, and that is going to be a historical fiction because Taylor Jenkins Reid is coming out with a new book called Atmosphere on June 3rd. And from what I know, this follows a female professor who's kind of always been interested in the stars, and she finds herself in a situation where she has the opportunity to apply for the first all-female program at NASA. And I do believe that this is going to involve some found family. Plus, I pretty much always enjoy Taylor Jenkins Reid's writing, even if they're not my typical cup of tea genre-wise. So I'm definitely eager to check this out when it drops. Now, moving on to sci-fi and fantasy, and apparently we have a cat, Miss Tink. The first book that's coming out that I'm really intrigued by this year is Sunrise on the Reaping, and this is a new installment in the Hunger Games series. This will be yet another prequel, and from what I know of this follows the second Quarter Quell, which was Haymitch's game. So this comes out March 18th, I believe, and definitely I am curious to read and find out more of the details of Haymitch's backstory and his games. If you recall from the main series, it is mentioned that this Quarter Quell is where they reaped double the amount of tributes. So there are 4 tributes from each district going in. So definitely this is going to have a lot more tension throughout the story, I believe. And we also do know a couple things about this arena and kind of like how the ending sequence of the determination of the victor played out. But I'm not going to mention those things here. I'll let you read and discover them for yourself if you're planning to do a reread of the series or just want to be surprised going into Sunrise on the Reaping. And I'm hoping that because we're going to be in another Hunger Games from hopefully the perspective of somebody who's actually going to be in them, that this is going to be a much more interesting book than Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Next up, we have a release that is slated for May 8th, but that I suspect is going to end up being pushed back because it's not available for pre-order yet. And that is The Lord of Demons by Evan Winter, the 3rd book in the Burning series. The first book of the series is The Rage of Dragons, which I think a lot more people are familiar with. But I'm very excited to continue on with this series. And this title is definitely hinting at giving us some insight in terms of some of the lore of the magic in this world. And so I'm very, very curious to get some of the answers I've been waiting on in those areas. But I also just enjoy following Tao, even though he's not always the most likable character and doesn't always make the smartest decisions. So I really do hope that this is going to come out in 2025. I just don't have faith that it's going to be on May 8th, especially because the release date for the second book in the series was pushed back, I think, twice before it actually was released on the announced date. But yeah, fingers crossed it comes out 2025 and we will see. I'm excited for it to come out whenever it comes out. And at this point, I probably need to reread the first couple books in the series. So maybe it's better that it comes out a little bit later for me so I have more time to get that reread in anyways. But yeah, definitely looking forward to that one. So next up on May 18th, we have The Devils by Joe Abercrombie releasing. And this is the first book in a brand new series that is not connected to his other books. But I have previously read and enjoyed the First Law trilogy, so I am definitely excited to check out some of his newer work and pick this up when it drops. And I don't think I can really do this synopsis justice summarizing in my own words, so this is one I am just going to read to you guys. The tagline is, "Holy work sometimes requires unholy deeds." Brother Diaz has been summoned to the sacred city, where he's certain a commendation and grand holy assignment awaits him. But his new flock is made up of unrepentant murderers, practitioners of ghastly magic, and outright monsters, and the mission he is tasked with will require bloody measures from them all in order to achieve its righteous ends. Elves lurk at our borders and hunger for our flesh, while greedy princes care for nothing but their own ambitions and comfort. With a hellish journey before him, it's a good thing Brother Diaz has devils on his side. So it definitely sounds like we're going to continue to have some morally gray characters from Joe Abercrombie and some corrupt royalty, as well as some kind of journey or quest. And all of that is something I'm excited to see more of from Joe Abercrombie, so I'm definitely looking forward to checking this one out. Especially because some of my favorite First Law characters were Logan and the other barbarians, and this kind of sounds like it might sort of play into those kind of character archetypes as well. So yeah, definitely excited. As an honorable mention, I do want to mention that the third book in the Eden Saga by Justin Lee Anderson, this is book 1, comes out on August 19th, I believe. And the title of the third book is The Damned King. I think this was originally a planned trilogy that's now a planned 4-book series, but I haven't yet started this, so I am definitely not looking into the synopsis and probably can't tell you too much about what it's about. I did just want to mention that it is coming in August and that I am excited for this series, so this is definitely one I will read eventually. And then the last one that has a confirmed release date at this point is Falling in a Sea of Stars, and that is number 8 in the Green Rider series by Kristen Britton. And this is a really fun series that follows the Green Riders, or Messengers of the King. And right away in book 1, you're following Kerrigan, who is on her way home from school when a Green Rider approaches her, pierced by arrows, dying, and he begs her to take up his mission and deliver a very important message to the king. And basically the events of the series unfold from there. I have previously read the first 3 books in this series, but I think Josephina from Fina Reads and I are going to be planning to read along a book a month leading up to the release of book 8 so that I'll be caught up for it. And we'll probably have channels for this over on the Bookish Drummer Discord if you want to join in with us. Whether it's your first time read or a reread, we're happy to have you join in. And I can definitely say that I liked book 1 but loved book 2 and 3 in this series. Already in book 3 there was just a lot of character growth and a lot more intrigue introduced. And I also think that this series has some excellent animal companions with some of the horses. So definitely lots to love, and I'm really looking forward to continuing on with this series and hopefully continuing to love it. And then there are also 3 sequels in Sci-Fi Fantasy that don't have confirmed release dates yet, but that I still want to touch on and just mention that I am very interested in checking them out when they come out. And there has been some buzz and some kind of loose predictions on release timelines and dates for these, so I do think it's worth mentioning here. The first one of those is 12 Months by Jim Butcher. This is Dresden number 18. And Jim Butcher a couple days ago posted on social media that he had finished his draft of this and is now basically ready to start the editing process. So I'm hopeful that we'll see this either at the very end of 2025 or sometime in 2026. and this is a series I am caught up on. I've been really enjoying following the Dresden Files, and definitely James Marsters does a fantastic job narrating the series, so I'm sure that I'm going to enjoy this when it drops. Next up, I want to mention that I have seen some rumors online that Sun Eater 7, Shadows Upon Time, is going to potentially be releasing in November 2025. I don't know if that is accurate at all. Like I said, I have just seen like whisperings and rumors that this is a potential release time for it. So I just thought that that was worth mentioning. And I am up to book 4 in Sun Eater. So definitely this is one I'm eager to read eventually. And then last up, the release you're probably all waiting for me to talk about if you know my reading tastes, Red God, the 7th book in the Red Rising series. This was originally predicted to come out in 2025, but I have seen online that Pierce Brown has estimated that it's now going to be summer 2026. So also just something interesting to know if you're a fellow Howler Red Rising fan, I will probably at the end of this year start a reread of the series and read 1 book a month leading up to the release once it's confirmed and announced, which will hopefully be summer of 2026. And Tink is back. So those are all the new releases I know about that I am looking forward to and excited to read, hopefully either this year or next year. Let me know down below in the comments what other anticipated releases you have on your list, what's coming out that you're looking forward to. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe on your way out if you want to, and have a great day. Bye!